Pablo Picasso was as famous for his life as he was for his art. We know of his periods of great artistic inspiration and conflict, his passionate and sometimes cruel relationships with women, his friendships with other important artists, and his macho chauvinism that encompassed a belief in revolution, but also in peace.
If Picasso had just been known as one of the originators of Cubism, he would have been an important figure in art history. But for decades he continued to make his art, always expanding and experimenting his practice, and playing a central role in 20th century art, until eventually his very name became synonymous with modernism.
Picasso, Masterpieces from the Musée National Picasso, is the palindromic title of the massive new show that's just opened at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. Drawn from Picasso's personal collection, it features dozens of works from the early blue and rose periods, through the Cubist years, to the Surrealist phase, and then on to the post-war period of Picasso, the rich and famous communist.
Big shows like this one can be a little overwhelming. What's good? What's bad? How do we come to terms with works in a show full of masterpieces? And can we learn something about Picasso and his art beyond the cliches of the fun-sized, bad-loving Spaniard? The reason Picasso's name became synonymous with modernism is because of paintings like this one. This is Reclining Woman Reading from 1939. And for all the undoubted skill that goes into making a painting like this, the fluid lines and the dynamic shapes, it still seems to me rather cold, a little distant. And that's because it looks like modern art, the scary stuff. How does one begin to understand Picasso the artist?
Picasso the artist is Picasso the man. He has been living a long life. He died after the age of 92, and all his life has been involved in art from his childhood to his death. So in 10 rooms and in 70 years, we can follow Picasso during this long life of fight to understand reality, to change art and to change the world. Because Picasso, as you know, is a committed artist. And it's not just a diary, it's a diary of the century.
I think the great revelation of this show for me is the discovery that Picasso wasn't an artist whose work can be easily slotted in to a style or a time period or a decade. He was an artist who restlessly went back and forth trying different styles, sometimes within a very short time period. Like the three paintings behind me, we were produced within just a few years of each other, 1925, 1930, and 1932.
Picasso Masterpieces is a blockbuster show with a phalanx of sponsors, supporters and media partners. The show also happens to be the swan song of long-serving Art Gallery of New South Wales director Edmund Capon.
You've only got to mention the word Picasso and everybody's got this image of this great protean figure who really is the defining artist of the West of the 20th century. And everybody knows that he took the human presence and distorted it, manipulated it, did strange things to it, took your ear and put it down your chin, took your nose and put it where the ear should be, did all these things to our faces and to our image.
You've argued that Picasso's work is Picasso himself. What did you mean by that?
What I mean by that is every painting by Picasso, I think, tells us more about Picasso than the subject. I think he's probably the most powerfully autobiographical painter, but everything's ultimately about him. It is a spectacular show of the artist who in my mind, defines the 20th century.
A cynical person might suggest that a big show like this is as much about the money as it is about the art, getting people through the doors and perhaps buying a souvenir or two. Of course, the punters will come, no matter what. And that's because in Australia, with our second-hand access to art history's icons, you just have to go and see for yourself. I want to leave you with this last thought. If this art is to tell us anything now, it's that some ideas never grow old. Picasso had the luck and the privilege and the talent to only be himself, to be true to the great experiment of his art. There's immense integrity in that idea, and I can get with that. Goodbye.